My name is Sharon Mayer. I'm a farmer. 11 years ago we had to sell our cows because we weren't making enough money. And I now work as an agricultural chaplain, covering the whole of Cheshire and the Wirral. I visited many farms in the last 8 years. Some are pleasant, well-maintained farmsteads. Others seem to be in another era. It is those at the harder end of farming, finding it increasingly difficult to make a living from the land that I represent today. Rural poverty? What's that all about? Surely poverty is restricted to urbanised areas. The countryside is such an idyllic place to be. Fresh air, space, beautiful views. Surely this is the province of the well-to-do. Or is it? Whilst true for many who live in rural areas, the reality can be very different for those who traditionally make their living from the land. The big difference is it's hidden. Up until the late 1990s, farming was a relatively healthy and robust industry. Indeed, management and investment income was a phrase frequently used. You hardly hear it now. From the outside, many farmhouses seem idyllic. Step inside, and the reality of cold, drafty, hard-to-heat places hits you, together with a clear need for expensive repairs that, quite frankly, impossible to afford. These homes may be owned, but more often they're tenanted. Tenant farmers having to pay realistic market rates, but against a background of erratic incomes and ever-increasing costs. At the far end of the spectrum are small farms, devoid of investment for many years, which are quite frankly completely squalid. Mucky farmyards with rotten drainage, farm buildings totally unfit for purpose. I've been in kitchens where it's impossible to tell where floor and carpet begin and end, if there is one. Where walls, plaster and wallpaper just one sticky, homogeneous mass. Where wallpaper just hangs off in drapes off damp walls. To be honest, they look little better than an exhibit at Iron Bridge or the Black Country Museums. Investment can only occur when incomes are relatively stable and profitable. But small farmers are becoming increasingly vulnerable to monopolies in the food industry, which is incredibly powerful. Weather can be kind, but also frustrating. A wet harvest or a late sowing can be costly in terms of ruined crops, high cost of drying, reduced feed values, or just a detrimental impact on the land. Prices that farmers receive are incredibly susceptible to all sorts of factors, and ironically, a good crop can lead to a very low price. A shortage of a product is good if you want to buy it, but not if you want to sell. Sorry, I got that the wrong way around. If you were listening, you would have worked that one out. A shortage of a product is good if you want to sell, but not if you want to buy. Let's just talk briefly about milk prices, a hot topic. Until 1995, they were relatively stable. Farmers could plan forward and invest. The disbandment of the Milk Marketing Board in 1995, because it was called a monopoly, have led to erratic prices. Farmers are subject to one-sided contracts imposed upon them by dairies. In 2016, milk prices fell about 50%, from approximately 30 pence a litre to 15. If you're on a supermarket contract, as are 10% of dairy farmers, you'll probably get just about enough money to make a living. But many are getting way below the cost of production. It's very hard to accept that some are getting more than you for the same product. Because of the contracts with supermarkets, the phrase divide and conquer comes to mind. Poverty has many names. It's lack of choice and being controlled. But I hear you say, what about subsidies? Don't farmers get something for nothing? Shouldn't the money be better used elsewhere, in the NHS, for example? It's a fair question and demands a good answer. Sadly, the price that customers pay for their food now has been severely distorted over the years, and it's now much cheaper than it costs to produce. The only way farmers can survive at all is through subsidies. They only go some way to restoring the balance of costs of producing the food and the price they receive. No government is interested in food price rising. Indeed, how many of us here want to pay more for food than we already do? Some do and could afford it, but many can't. We've already heard stories relating to food poverty. How do we resolve that issue fairly for everyone? To be honest, most farmers like to see the end of subsidies and just get a decent price for a fabulous product. Farmers don't expect to be rich, but when you work a 14-hour day every day of the year, you hope to earn a little bit out of it, don't you? Poverty has many names. It's working for less than zero income. Some farmers are so deeply in debt, but have no choice other than to keep going, desperately hoping things will improve. And this is the reality of the farmers I meet. With debt comes shame. The fact that I'm standing here instead of a farmer is telling in itself. It's extremely difficult for a farmer saddled with debt to stand here and admit it publicly. This is partly shame that he's not been able to make a success of his business, like his father and his grandfather, but also desperate fear that if he's found out, his tenancy is at risk. Some cannot even declare themselves bankrupt because elderly relatives may still be on the partnership and creditors will go after them. This is a real issue, and it causes high levels of stress and anxiety. Poverty has many names: fear and shame. Many farmers can no longer afford to pay wages. Bought-in labour is no longer an option. It all rests in his hands. And most of the farmers I visit work 365 days a year, and with animals this can mean a working day from 5 until 6 or 7 in the evening, 5 in the morning until 6 or 7 in the evening. There will then be night carvings, lambing, administration, a huge amount of paperwork, and severe penalties in some situations if that's not done on time. Much of this has to be done online, and we've heard of the issues of rural broadband. In this area alone, some farmers only get it once every 3 or 4 days. That can be one day too late to get your information in on time. This additional stress and frustration, coupled with severe exhaustion, leads inexorably to depression and, in some cases, suicidal thoughts. And I have worked with one farmer who tried to commit suicide and another one that's perpetually on suicide watch. Poverty has many names: disadvantage technically, no time, exhaustion, and stress. As I said, farming leads to suicidal thoughts at times. Farmers spend long hours working alone with little human contact, which can allow mental health problems and suicidal thoughts to fester. It's common to spend entire days seeing nobody, and social isolation can lead to lack of support or the lack of other people noticing mental illness symptoms. And let's not forget that working on a farm, you are surrounded by lethal machinery and also other things that you shouldn't be having around when you've got suicidal thoughts. I'm going off script for a moment, and some of you may have heard about the closure of Chelford Market, which has been in existence for over 100 years. It's going to close in January due to various reasons, but mainly because of economic. The market is a thriving business. Lots of people go, there's many animals sold and bought, but the land will be sold for housing. I saw grown men cry because it's their only place that they meet other farmers. For some of them, that is their only form of contact with somebody else. There will be many other consequences as well, loss of jobs. It's a very, very sad situation. Poverty has many names. It's loneliness and isolation. Visiting a doctor is costly in terms of time and money. Indeed, living in the country is expensive in itself. You have to have a car. You have to pay petrol to go anywhere or to get anything. For example, shopping or health services or going to school. And you've just seen a most moving presentation of the problems of travel to school. I know of one couple already under severe pressure. He has a broken arm. His wife will have to take on the job of the two and look after him till he's recovered. There's no one else to do it for her. It's just tough. But mental health, exhaustion and frustration will set in. Poverty has many names. It's lack of money. And what about young people? There are some incredibly dedicated young people out there working hours that most employees wouldn't dream of. But they are dwindling. You also have to be pretty fit. There is little room for someone with disabilities on a farm. It's physically demanding and very dangerous. More and more young people are turning to jobs with stable incomes and hopefully more sensible hours. But young people are very vulnerable to isolation. With the withdrawal of many local public transport services, they can't get into towns to meet friends or get a job. Poverty has many names. It's a lack of fun and a lack of a future. Please don't think all farmers are in this position, but in the past 10 years, hundreds of small farms have been lost. It can then be very difficult to transition to another job when farming is all you've known. You have no or little money, very poor creditworthiness, and you're homeless. Farms are having to get bigger and bigger to survive, but having to make compromises. Rural poverty exists. A lovely view is very nice, but it doesn't pay the bills. These are real issues based on real lives in Cheshire. Rural poverty can't remain hidden. It needs to be recognised and addressed. Poverty has many names. It's believing there's no chance to dream. It's worrying about providing for those you care about. And perhaps most of all for farmers, it's not having any time to spend with the people who matter in your life, because you're so busy working to pay the bills and meet the endless demands and robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's been so good to listen to all that's been said so far. Thank you so much for listening to the rural voice too. We are all the same. We all have the same hopes and dreams. Thank you for the opportunity to share and hopefully work together.